But here's something that caught our eye this morning, and that is, just imagine, it's one thing if you see things a candidate has said in the past and it's printed on paper in block letters. It's one thing to see that. It's another thing to actually hear the person, the candidate, in their own words. And thanks to autobiographies by Barack Obama, you can do just that. And some of the stuff he says could be embarrassing.
Right. As you know, Clinton, he recorded some of his own. His book is called
Dreams of My Father.
Dreams of My Father, and he did the audio version of it. In it, he talks about drugs.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about doing drugs. Now, here's something that he says in the book that I wasn't aware of. He says about the drugs that he tried drugs enthusiastically. Mm-hmm. And he goes on to say if it didn't help solve whatever the problem was getting you down, at least it could help you laugh at the world's folly. So I didn't know. I mean, I knew he had talked about drug use, but to hear your candidate talk about using drugs enthusiastically in their own words, that might have an impact on some voters.
Yeah, we talked to Frank Luntz yesterday on the show, and he talked about the use of your voice in a campaign, and he sort of he made point of pointing out the fact that John McCain in his latest campaign commercial talking about his own record hired a voiceover guy, did not use his own voice, found it to be in focus groups highly ineffectual by not having his own voice. So having Barack Obama's own voice tied to some of these remarks that could be construed one way or the other as controversial, it puts much more an immediacy on it where you're not used to just reading a quote perhaps out of context.
You know what it does, though? It makes it seem more like a confession, because it's, and when I was 18 and I was doing this and doing that, it just makes it seem like, oh, wow, he's admitting that he did those things. Also, apparently, according to thepolitico.com, and I've got to get on my glasses because when I printed it, nothing came out here. He also, something else that's problematic is Obama.
Reverend Wright, is that what you're going to say?
Reverend Wright, plus also others using racial slurs.
Oh, right, because he, at one point in this book, in his own voice, he talks about Reverend Wright, and he mimics Reverend Wright's style, which you know is the fiery, sort of bombastic style. Obama, apparently in his book, in the audio version, he mimics it, and he says something that Reverend Wright talked about, where white folks' greed runs a world in need. Well, to hear, again, your candidate talking in these racist terms, that also could be very effective against him.
And coming back to haunt him, I'll remember John Kerry, by him being up on stage in West Virginia saying, I voted for the war before I voted against it. How many times was that replayed and replayed and replayed? If that had been written, not as effective. You did an audio book, though, for your book, right? Is there anything in there, is there any little nugget that if you heard it and not read it would come back to haunt you?
Oh, many. That's why I'm not running for public office. Hello?